I didn't believe in fate until a damn book changed everything. There I was, rushing through the Greensboro Public Library like my perfectly tailored pantsuit was on fire. Late for court, as usual, but desperate for that one text that could win my case. That's when I spotted it. Harrington's Precedent in Constitutional Law, last copy, sitting pretty on the shelf, like it was waiting just for me. My fingers were literally 2 inches away when another hand shot out, grabbing the spine at the exact same moment. "Excuse me, I need this," I said, not bothering to look up at the book thief. "So do I, counselor." That voice, low, authoritative, slightly raspy, I knew exactly who it belonged to before I even met those intense green eyes. Judge Natasha Hill, new to the bench, notorious for her zero-tolerance policy and impossibly high standards. And here I was, playing tug-of-war over a book with her like we were schoolchildren. "Judge Hill," I managed, my blue eyes widening as I took in her full presence. Her black hair was pulled back in that severe bun she always wore in court, but here a few strands had escaped, softening the sharp angles of her face. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Libraries are public places, Miss Parker," she said, her grip on the book not loosening one bit. "Though I typically visit during less frantic hours." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. At 32, I'd argued before the state Supreme Court, faced down crime bosses, and never once felt as intimidated as I did now, standing before Natasha Hill in casual clothes. Sleek black pants and a deep green sweater that made her eyes look like emeralds. "The Fairchild case," I explained, still holding my end of the book. "It hinges on a precedent I believe is in this text." A flicker of interest crossed her face. "The land rights dispute?" "You're representing the developer?" "The homeowner, actually." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe respect. It disappeared too quickly to tell. "I need this for research on a sentencing decision," she countered, tugging slightly. We stood there, 2 grown women engaged in the most ridiculous standoff over a dusty legal text. A librarian walked by, eyeing us with obvious judgment. "I suppose," Judge Hill finally said, "we could share it." "Share it?" I repeated, as if she'd suggested we sprout wings and fly. "Yes, Miss Parker, share." A concept typically mastered in kindergarten. But there was the slightest curve to her lips that wasn't quite a smile but definitely wasn't her courtroom scowl. That's how I ended up sitting across from Judge Natasha Hill, at a tiny table tucked between constitutional law and maritime regulations. She read with complete focus, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound journal. Her handwriting was exactly what you'd expect, precise, elegant. The library lights caught the angles of her face, highlighting cheekbones that could cut glass. "You're staring, counselor," she said without looking up. "Just waiting my turn with the book, Your Honor." This time she did look up, her green eyes catching mine. "Natasha," she said, "we're not in court." "Autumn," I replied, offering my name like a peace treaty. She nodded once, then slid the book across to me. "Your turn." I flagged the relevant sections for my purposes. Try not to destroy my system. Our fingers brushed during the handoff, just a momentary touch, but I felt a jolt all the same. I blamed it on static electricity, even though I knew better. 2 hours passed with us trading the book back and forth, occasionally debating points of law in hushed whispers that earned us stern looks from the librarian. When my phone alarm buzzed, I jumped. "Court in 30 minutes, I explained, gathering my things. "The Mendoza hearing," she said, and I realized with horror that she was presiding. We'd both forgotten. "I'll see you there, Your Honor," I said, formality snapping back into place like a rubber band. She gathered her notes methodically. "It seems we're heading to the same destination." Walking out together felt strange, like we'd accidentally crossed some invisible boundary. At the library steps, about to head our separate ways, she turned to me. "Miss Parker, Autumn, good luck with Fairchild. That precedent you're looking for? Try Chapter 7. Before I could thank her, she was gone, striding purposefully toward the courthouse, once again every inch the intimidating Judge Hill. I stood there watching her go, clutching my notes, wondering how the hell I was supposed to argue coherently before her in half an hour, when all I could think about was the way she'd said my name. Walking into Judge Hill's courtroom felt different after our library encounter. I smoothed my navy skirt suit and touched my blonde hair, making sure every strand was in place. The bailiff called everyone to attention as she entered, and I couldn't help but notice how seamlessly she transformed back into the formidable Judge Hill, not a trace of the woman who'd almost smiled at me between bookshelves. "Counsel, your arguments," she said, her eyes meeting mine without a flicker of recognition. I rose, feeling oddly self-conscious. "Your Honor, the defense moves to suppress the evidence obtained during the search of Mr. Mendoza's property." For the next 20 minutes, I laid out my case with precision, watching her face for any reaction. Nothing. Her green eyes remained impassive, her questions sharp and pointed. When the prosecution presented their counter-argument, I could already sense which way she was leaning. "Motion denied, Miss Parker," she announced. The search was conducted within constitutional parameters. The defeat stung more than it should have. I'd lost motions before, but something about losing to her, after those hours in the library, felt personal. "Your Honor, with all due respect." "My ruling stands, Counselor." She cut me off, her voice cooler than the autumn air outside. "Court is adjourned until tomorrow." My client, a young man accused of burglary, looked defeated. "I thought you said we had a chance," he whispered. "We still do," I assured him, though my confidence had taken a hit. "Trial's just beginning." Later that week, the Mendoza case concluded with a guilty verdict. It wasn't a surprise, but as I packed my briefcase, I felt Judge Hill's eyes on me. When I looked up, she was already turning away, her black robe swirling as she retreated to her chambers. 2 cases later, I found myself before her again, and again, I lost. The local legal community began to notice. "Hill's got it in for you," my colleague Dan remarked over drinks. "What'd you do, steal her parking space?" I sipped my wine, thinking of a shared book rather than a parking space. Just bad luck. The string of losses continued until I began to question my own abilities. Was I imagining the extra scrutiny she gave my arguments? The way her questions to me seemed designed to expose every weakness in my case? It all came to a head with the Jameson trial. My client, a woman accused of fraud, was actually innocent. I was sure of it. I'd built an airtight case, or so I thought. When Judge Hill sustained objection after objection, limiting my key witness testimony, I felt something snap. "Your Honor, may I approach the bench?" I asked, my voice tight. Up close, I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "This is the 3rd time you've restricted defense questioning on this witness," I said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting impropriety, Counselor?" "I'm suggesting my client deserves a fair trial." "Step back, Miss Parker," she said, her voice dangerously low, "and watch your next words carefully." I lost that case too. My client was sentenced to 3 years, and I felt each one like a personal failure. I stumbled out of the courthouse into the rainy afternoon, not bothering with an umbrella. The coffee shop across the street beckoned with its warm lights. I was nursing my second espresso, reviewing where I'd gone wrong, when the chair across from me scraped against the floor. I looked up to find Judge Hill, her hair damp from rain, no longer in robes but a charcoal sweater that softened her appearance. "May I?" she asked, though she was already sitting. "Free country," I muttered, too exhausted for professional courtesy. She ordered a tea, and we sat in awkward silence until she spoke. "You fought hard for Jameson." Not hard enough, apparently. The evidence was substantial, Autumn. The use of my first name caught me off guard. She didn't do it. The jury thought otherwise. "Because they only heard half the story," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Your rulings made sure of that." Instead of the anger I expected, she leaned back, studying me. "You really believe in her?" "I believe in all my clients. That's my job. Even when they're guilty?" "Especially then." I hesitated. But she wasn't. Something shifted in her expression. "The witness you wanted to cross-examine more thoroughly, what would he have said?" For the next hour, we dissected the case, her sharp mind catching nuances even I had missed. As the rain stopped and afternoon faded to evening, our conversation drifted from law to justice, from theory to the messy reality of practice. "Why did you become a defense attorney?" she asked, her third tea growing cold. "To fight for the underdogs," I answered honestly. "You?" "To uphold the law." A simple answer, but something in her eyes suggested there was more. As we prepared to leave, she hesitated. "The Jameson ruling troubled me too," she admitted quietly. "I'm reviewing the trial transcript." She stood so close I could see a raindrop still clinging to her hair. Before I could respond, she leaned in, her lips brushing my cheek so lightly I almost thought I'd imagined it. "Good night, Autumn," she whispered. And then she was gone, leaving me frozen in place, my heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with legal arguments. The Davis case started like any other, until it wasn't. My client, a young programmer named Eric Davis, stood accused of wire fraud. Simple enough, except when I started digging through discovery documents, something felt off. "Look at these transactions," I said to my assistant. "They all funnel through the same shell company before disappearing offshore." 3 days of investigation later, I found myself staring at a complex network of financial transfers that screamed organized criminal activity. Not some lone programmer's work, but something systematic, the kind of operation that had tentacles reaching everywhere. Pyramid scheme, my investigator confirmed over the phone, and not just any scheme, this one's called Prosperity Partners. They've managed to stay under the radar because they recruit selectively. That night, hunched over documents spread across my dining table, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone at 11 p.m. When I peered through the peephole, I nearly choked on my wine. Judge Natasha Hill stood outside, holding a file folder. "What are you doing here?" I asked after opening the door, too shocked for proper greetings. "May I come in?" Her usual commanding tone was replaced with something more careful. I led her to my living room, hastily clearing space among my case files. "How did you get my address?" "Court records." She glanced around my apartment, taking in the law books, the half-empty wine glass, the scattered papers. "You're looking into Prosperity Partners." It wasn't a question. My spine stiffened. "That's privileged work product for the Davis case. I'm not here as a judge." She placed her folder on my coffee table. "I'm here because 3 cases involving this organization have come before me in the last year, each defendant represented by different attorneys, each case with striking similarities." I poured her a glass of wine without asking. She accepted it, our fingers brushing during the handoff. That same jolt from the library returned. "Are you suggesting a conspiracy?" I asked. "I'm suggesting that your client may be a small piece of something much larger." She opened her folder, revealing meticulously organized notes, and potentially more dangerous. For the next 2 hours, we compared information. Her judicial perspective combined with my defense work revealed a disturbing pattern. Prosperity Partners recruited struggling professionals, used them as unwitting fronts for money laundering, then discarded them when things got too hot. "My client thinks he was building investment software," I said. "He had no idea what they were really using it for." Natasha, somewhere in the night she'd become Natasha, not Judge Hill, leaned back against my couch. "The problem is proving it. And finding out who's actually running this operation." She nodded, tucking a strand of black hair behind her ear. In the soft lamplight of my apartment, away from the courtroom, she looked different. Younger, maybe, more human. "This puts us in an awkward position," she said finally. "You're representing Davis. I'll be presiding over his case." "Judicial ethics," I acknowledged. "You should recuse yourself." "If I do, they'll just assign another judge who doesn't have this information." We sat in silence, the weight of what we'd discovered hanging between us. Finally, I reached for the wine bottle. "Another glass?" I shouldn't, but she held out her glass anyway. Our fingers touched again as I poured. This time, neither of us pulled away immediately. Her eyes met mine, green depths unreadable in the dim light. "Why did you come to me with this?" I asked quietly. "Because you care about more than winning." She hesitated. "And because I trust your judgment." Coming from her, it felt like the highest compliment. I became acutely aware of how close we were sitting, of the late hour, of the way her perfume mingled with the wine's aroma. She must have sensed it too, because she abruptly gathered her papers. "It's late, I should go." At my door, she paused. "Be careful, Autumn. These people have resources." "I always am." "No, you're not," she said with unexpected gentleness. "You dive in headfirst. It's admirable and terrifying." Before I could respond, her fingers brushed against mine, so lightly it could have been accidental. But the look in her eyes told me it wasn't. After she left, I stood frozen by my door, my hand tingling where she'd touched it. The Davis case had just become infinitely more complicated, and not just because of the pyramid scheme. I returned to my files, trying to focus on the case rather than the memory of Natasha's fingers against mine, or the way her voice had softened when she warned me to be careful. Somewhere between financial records and court precedents, I realized I was in trouble, and it had nothing to do with Prosperity Partners. My investigation into Prosperity Partners consumed me. Each thread I pulled revealed something darker underneath, like lifting a pretty rock to find writhing centipedes beneath. I'd created a wall of evidence in my spare bedroom. Photos, financial records, names connected by red string like some scene from a crime show. "You've barely slept," my assistant Lena remarked, dropping off more files. "This is way beyond defending Eric Davis now." She wasn't wrong. Davis was just a pawn, his case merely my entry point into this labyrinth. The pyramid scheme had its tentacles everywhere. Politicians, businesses, even charities. Someone powerful was pulling strings, and the deeper I dug, the more nervous I became about who might be watching me dig. When my cell phone rang at midnight, I expected it to be Lena with updates. Instead, Natasha's voice came through, tense and hushed. "Can you meet me? Now?" We rendezvoused at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Greensboro, the kind of place where the coffee's always burnt and the waitresses call you honey regardless of your age. Natasha looked unlike her courtroom self, hair loose around her shoulders, wearing jeans and a gray sweater that softened her usual severity. "I received this today," she said, sliding an unmarked envelope across the table. Inside was a photograph of her leaving my apartment building last week, time-stamped at 1:23 a.m. Beneath it, typed, "Judges should remain impartial." "Shit," I whispered. "Precisely." She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "Someone knows we're communicating outside court, and they want you to back off from whatever we're uncovering." Her green eyes flickered up to mine. "I've been looking into cases connected to Prosperity Partners. 3 judges who presided over related cases were suddenly reassigned last year. One took early retirement." The waitress refilled our cups, giving us a curious once-over before moving on. "This is bigger than we thought," I said when we were alone again. "It gets worse." Natasha leaned closer. "I've been quietly reviewing sentencing patterns. Anyone who might expose the operation gets maximum penalties. Anyone who keeps quiet gets minimal time. Someone's manipulating the justice system." My stomach churned. But who has that kind of influence? Someone at the top. Someone who can pressure judges, manipulate evidence, control outcomes. We spent hours in that diner, comparing notes, building a clearer picture. By dawn, my laptop battery had died, and we'd gone through a pot of coffee between us. "We need proof," I said, rubbing my tired eyes. "Documentation, testimony, something concrete. I might know someone who can help." A clerk from another courthouse who noticed irregularities. The morning light cast a golden glow across her face, highlighting the shadows under her eyes. Despite her exhaustion, she was beautiful, a thought I immediately tried to push away. "We should go," she said, noticing my stare. "Before rush hour." Outside, the air was crisp with early autumn chill. The parking lot was nearly empty except for our 2 cars and an old pickup truck. "I can't stop thinking about who took that photograph," I said. "They could be watching us now." Natasha scanned the surroundings. "I've changed my routines, varied my driving patterns. You should do the same. I'm more worried about you. You're the one receiving threats." Her expression softened momentarily. "I can handle myself." "I'm sure you can, but—" "Your concern is noted, counselor," she cut me off, professional mask sliding back into place. But something in her eyes betrayed her, a flicker of vulnerability that made my heart skip. Later that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Tonight. 9 p.m. Warehouse District." I knew instantly it was Natasha. We'd agreed to use burner phones for communication. The warehouse was abandoned, windows boarded up, graffiti marking its walls like urban scars. Natasha was already inside when I arrived, flashlight illuminating stacks of boxes. "Look at these," she whispered, pointing to shipping labels. "All the same shell company from the Davis case." "This is it," I breathed. "Physical evidence connecting—" A sound outside silenced us both. Footsteps, then voices. Natasha grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a stack of crates. We crouched together in the darkness, her body pressed against mine as 2 men entered, flashlight beams dancing across the concrete floor. My heart hammered so loudly I was certain they would hear it. Natasha's breath was warm against my neck, her hand still gripping my arm. The men moved through the warehouse, voices low, checking something on the far side. After what felt like hours, they left. Neither of us moved immediately. In the silence, I became acutely aware of how close we were, her chest rising and falling against my shoulder, her face inches from mine. "That was close," I whispered. Instead of answering, she reached up, her fingers gently brushing hair from my face. The touch sent electricity through me. "Autumn," she murmured, and then her lips were on mine, tentative at first, then with growing urgency. I knew I should pull away, this complicated everything. But instead, I found myself responding, tasting coffee and fear and desire all at once. Her hand slid into my hair, drawing me closer. When we finally broke apart, breathless, reality came rushing back. "We shouldn't have done that," she whispered, though she didn't move away. "Probably not," I agreed, my lips still tingling from her kiss. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. As we slipped out of the warehouse into the night, I knew we had just crossed the most dangerous one of all. The Davis case was scheduled for trial in 3 weeks, and I still hadn't found a way to exonerate him without exposing the entire Prosperity Partners operation. I needed more evidence, something concrete that would hold up in court. That's how I found myself at a recruitment event for financial entrepreneurs, nursing a glass of cheap champagne while scanning the room for familiar faces. My cover story was simple: a lawyer tired of the grind, looking for alternative income streams, the kind of professional they typically targeted. First time? A sleek man in an expensive suit approached, his smile practiced. "Yes," I answered, playing the part. "My friend Marcus said this changed his life." Marcus didn't exist, but the name dropped from the research Natasha and I had compiled, a favorite recruiter they used. "Marcus has done exceptionally well with us." The man's eyes lit up with recognition. "I'm James. Let me introduce you to some of our success stories." For the next hour, I was passed around like a promising prospect. Everyone had the same glazed look of enthusiasm, the same rehearsed testimonials about financial freedom. I nodded, asked the right questions, played the eager potential recruit. "We have a special introductory seminar tomorrow night," James finally said. "More intimate, for serious candidates only." I didn't miss his meaning. This was the real recruitment, the inner circle. "I'd love to attend." "Excellent." He handed me a card with an address. "Business attire. Bring your financial portfolio information." A text buzzed on my phone as I left. "Courthouse. My chambers. Now." Natasha's burner number. 20 minutes later, I slipped through the back entrance of the county courthouse, taking the stairs to avoid security cameras. Her chambers were locked, but she opened immediately at my soft knock. "What happened?" I asked, alarmed by her expression. "They're on to you." She locked the door behind me. "Someone accessed your bar association records today. They're vetting potential recruits." My blood ran cold. "How do you know?" "My clerk friend. She monitors unusual database queries." Natasha ran a hand through her hair. "If they dig deep enough, they'll connect you to Davis. I've been invited to an inner circle meeting tomorrow night." Her face paled. "Autumn, you can't go. This is our chance to get concrete evidence. It's too dangerous." "I can handle myself," I echoed her words from before. She stepped closer, her professional demeanor cracking. "These people don't play games. If they suspect you're investigating them, then I won't give them reason to suspect." Our eyes locked in silent battle. I could see fear in hers, not for herself, but for me, and something more complex beneath it. "I need to do this," I said softly. The next night, I dressed in my most conservative suit and headed to the address, a penthouse in Greensboro's financial district. Security was tight, they collected phones at the door and scanned everyone for recording devices. Inside, about 20 potential recruits mingled with established members. The presentation began with standard inspirational fare before shifting to their actual operation. Without explicitly saying so, they outlined a classic pyramid scheme: recruiting others, pooling investments, promises of massive returns. "Questions?" the presenter asked afterward. I raised my hand. "What specifically happens to my initial investment?" "It's pooled into our proprietary trading system," he explained. "Our returns average 28% annually." "That's impressive," I said, making notes. "Who manages the trading system?" A slight hesitation. Our financial team handles all transactions. After the presentation, James cornered me. You ask good questions. Sharp mind. I like that. He handed me a folder. This is our entry package. 50,000 minimum investment. The amount was deliberately calibrated, large enough to weed out casual investors, small enough that losses wouldn't trigger major investigations. I'll need to liquidate some assets, I said smoothly. Take your time. His smile didn't reach his eyes. We'll run our standard background check in the meantime. 3 hours later, I was frantically explaining everything to Natasha in my apartment. You need to back out, she insisted. If they run a deep check, I can't. I'm this close to understanding their operation. They could hurt you. Or I could save Davis and potentially dozens of others. She grabbed my shoulders. This isn't just about justice anymore, it's about your safety. The intensity in her eyes stopped my argument cold. This wasn't Judge Hill talking. This was Natasha, raw and unfiltered. I can't lose you to this, she whispered. Before I could respond, my laptop chimed with an incoming email. We both froze, then slowly approached the screen. It was from James. Background check complete. Welcome to Prosperity Partners. Orientation tomorrow, 8 p.m. Beneath was a list of personal details about me. My law school, previous cases, even my mortgage information. They know who I am, I breathed. But not why you're interested, Natasha said, reading further. Yet. I scrolled down to find a postscript that made my stomach drop. Bring documentation for your investment. No exceptions. Natasha's hand found mine, squeezing tight. You're in too deep. Looking into her worried eyes, I realized she was right. I'd accidentally infiltrated a dangerous organization with no extraction plan, and tomorrow night, they expected me to become a full member. What have I done? I whispered. I need $50,000 by tomorrow night, I said to Natasha, pacing my living room. That's insane, she replied, watching me from my couch. You can't actually give them money? I don't have a choice. I stopped pacing, facing her directly. If I don't show up with the cash, they'll know something's wrong. I'm already on their radar. Dawn found us still strategizing. I looked at Natasha, her usually perfect appearance rumpled from the all-nighter, dark circles under those piercing green eyes. Something had fundamentally shifted between us. The kiss in the warehouse, the way she'd gripped my hand when we read the email. We were no longer just allies in an investigation. I can get the money, she finally said. My savings. Absolutely not. I shook my head. I'm not risking your financial security. It's not a risk if we do this right. We document everything, create a paper trail, make it an official undercover operation. She leaned forward. With proper documentation, you can get it back through civil forfeiture. She was right, but it meant involving others. We'd need law enforcement cooperation. I have a contact in the FBI who specializes in financial crimes, someone I trust. By afternoon, Natasha had arranged a meeting with Agent Larson, a serious woman with a no-nonsense demeanor who listened to our evidence without interruption. You've stumbled into a 3-year investigation, she finally said. We've been tracking Prosperity Partners, but couldn't get anyone inside. So you'll help? I asked. Conditionally. She glanced between us. Miss Parker continues as our inside person, but following our protocols. Judge Hill, you need to recuse yourself from any related cases immediately. Natasha's jaw tightened. If I recuse without explanation, it raises flags. Find a reason, Larson insisted. That evening, Natasha transferred the money to my account, while Agent Larson's team prepared surveillance equipment cleverly disguised as jewelry. A necklace with a hidden microphone, earrings with GPS tracking. Remember, Larson instructed. Gather information only. Don't try to be a hero. After she left, Natasha helped me prepare, reviewing names and connections we'd identified. The penthouse would likely be swept for devices, so I memorized key details instead of risking notes. This is unnecessarily dangerous, Natasha said for the 20th time, standing close enough that I could smell her perfume. Says the woman who just transferred her life savings to my account. Her hand reached up, adjusting my necklace, the microphone, her fingers lingering against my skin. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. My voice came out huskier than intended. The moment stretched between us, tension building until she suddenly stepped back, professional mask sliding into place. Agent Larson will be monitoring. If anything seems off, I'll abort. I know. That night, I arrived at the penthouse with a cashier's check and every nerve on high alert. As expected, they scanned me for devices, but the FBI tech was good, nothing registered. James greeted me personally, clearly pleased by my investment. The same 20 recruits from before were there, along with higher-level members I hadn't seen previously. I smiled, shook hands, played the eager new recruit while cataloging faces and names. Now that everyone's here, James announced, we can begin the real orientation. What followed was a masterclass in financial manipulation, how to recruit vulnerable professionals, the script for persuading them to invest, methods for handling skeptics. Throughout, they never explicitly admitted to illegal activity, using carefully crafted language that skirted legal boundaries. Your first assignment, James told us later, is to bring in 2 new members within 30 days. Any recommendations on finding prospects? I asked innocently. Professional organizations are fertile ground. He smiled. Your legal connections, for instance, would be valuable to us. The implication was clear. They wanted access to more people in the justice system. I thought of Natasha, of the pressure they'd already applied to judges, and felt sick. When the meeting ended, James pulled me aside. We have high hopes for you, Autumn. Your background makes you uniquely valuable. I'm looking forward to being part of the team. The words tasted like ash. One more thing. His grip on my arm tightened slightly. We noticed you've been handling Eric Davis's case. Interesting coincidence. My heart stopped, but years of courtroom experience kept my expression neutral. One of many cases on my docket. Why? Just curious about your defense strategy. His smile didn't reach his eyes, given that he violated our confidentiality agreements. Attorney-client privilege prevents me from discussing specifics, I replied smoothly. Of course. He released my arm. See you next week. I maintained my composure until I reached the parking garage, then leaned against a concrete pillar, trembling. They knew about Davis. They were watching me more closely than we'd realized. A car engine startled me. Headlights flashed twice, our signal. I hurried over to find Natasha behind the wheel. Get in, she urged. The moment the door closed, she pulled me into a desperate kiss that took my breath away. When we broke apart, she whispered against my lips, I thought they'd made you. They're on to me, I admitted. But I'm still in. As she drove us away from the garage, her hand found mine in the darkness, holding on like she'd never let go. Winter descended on Greensboro with unexpected ferocity. 3 weeks into my undercover work with Prosperity Partners, the city was paralyzed by the worst snowstorm in decades. Streets disappeared under blankets of white, businesses closed, and the courthouse suspended operations for the first time in 15 years. I should have been relieved by the break. Instead, I paced my apartment, a caged animal. Every day with the organization pushed me closer to the edge. I'd recruited no one, of course, inventing excuses about potential candidates backing out. My burner phone buzzed constantly with texts from James and other members, their patience wearing thin. Your recruitment period ends this week, James had warned yesterday. The board expects results. The mysterious board, the shadowy leadership I still hadn't identified. Getting to them was the whole point of this dangerous charade, but I seemed no closer than when I started. A knock at my door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Through the peephole I saw Natasha, snowflakes melting in her black hair. I opened the door to find her stamping snow from her boots. The roads are treacherous, she said, unwinding her scarf. I nearly turned back twice. Why didn't you? I helped her with her coat, our fingers brushing. She met my eyes. You know why. The electricity between us had only intensified since that kiss in the parking garage. We'd been careful, professional during meetings with Agent Larson, but the tension remained, a live wire neither of us could bring ourselves to touch. Any progress with the investigation? She asked, moving to my kitchen to prepare coffee as if she belonged there. Nothing substantial. I sighed, watching her familiar movements. James is pressuring me for recruits. I'm running out of excuses. Larson says they're close to identifying the board members, she offered. Just hang on a little longer. Outside, the wind howled, rattling my windows. The weather forecast predicted the storm would intensify overnight. You shouldn't drive back in this, I said, glancing at the worsening conditions. Natasha looked out at the swirling snow. I didn't intend to. The implication hung between us, heavy with possibility. We spent the evening reviewing evidence, meticulously organizing what we'd gathered. Around 9, my building's power flickered, then died completely, plunging us into darkness. Perfect timing, I muttered, fumbling for my phone's flashlight. Natasha's laugh carried through the darkness. At least we finished the work. I lit candles, their warm glow casting dancing shadows across her face. With the heat off, the apartment quickly grew colder. I have extra blankets, I offered, but we both knew that wasn't what this moment was about. She moved closer, close enough that I could feel her warmth. Autumn, she whispered, my name a question and an answer all at once. When our lips met this time, there was no urgency, no fear driving us, only a slow-burning desire that had been building since that first day in the library. Her hands tangled in my blonde hair as mine traced the curve of her waist. We shouldn't, I whispered against her neck, not believing my own words. We've said that before. Her fingers unbuttoned my blouse with careful precision. I'm tired of shouldn't. The candlelight painted golden patterns on her skin as clothing fell away. Outside, the storm raged, but in my bedroom, we created our own warmth, exploring each other with deliberate tenderness. Her touch was both gentle and commanding, drawing responses from my body I hadn't known were possible. After, we lay tangled in sheets, her head resting on my chest, my fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. I've wanted this since I saw you arguing that motion in my courtroom, she admitted, voice soft in the darkness. You were so passionate, so determined. That case? I lost terribly. You lost beautifully. She propped herself up on one elbow, green eyes serious. That's when I knew you were dangerous. Dangerous? I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. To my careful control, to everything I thought I wanted. Her voice faltered. I never expected you, Autumn Parker. The vulnerability in her expression stole my breath. This formidable woman, who commanded respect from hardened criminals and seasoned attorneys alike, was looking at me like I held her heart in my hands. I'm scared, I confessed. Not of Prosperity Partners, but of this, us. What happens when this case ends? She was silent for a long moment. That depends on whether we survive it. The reminder of our precarious situation settled between us. Tomorrow the snow would stop, the power would return. I would go back to playing my role, walking the knife's edge of discovery. She would return to recusing herself from related cases, finding excuses that wouldn't raise suspicion. But tonight, in the storm's isolation, we had created a bubble where only we existed. I pulled her closer, memorizing the feel of her skin against mine, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Whatever happens, she whispered into the darkness, know that you, are worth every risk. This plan is insane, Agent Larson said flatly, spreading the documents I'd prepared across her desk. You're talking about deliberately entrapping the organization's leadership? It's not entrapment if they're already committing crimes, I countered. We just need to give them the opportunity to incriminate themselves on record. 3 days had passed since the snowstorm, since Natasha and I had crossed a line from which there was no return. We'd barely seen each other since, both diving back into our respective roles with renewed determination. My time as a Prosperity Partners recruit was running out. James had given me an ultimatum, bring in recruits by week's end or face reevaluation. We all knew what that meant. The plan is legally sound, Natasha added, standing by the window in Larson's office. Her professional mask was firmly in place, but I caught her eyes lingering on me when she thought no one was looking. With proper documentation, we can present this as a reverse sting operation. Larson sighed. Walk me through it again. I tell James I've found the perfect recruit, a judge who's struggling financially due to a recent divorce. I pointed to the fake profile we'd created. They'll jump at the chance to compromise someone with judicial authority. And the judge will be me, Natasha finished. Or rather, an FBI agent posing as me, wearing a wire. The moment they offer the kickback scheme to influence cases, we have them on record attempting to bribe a federal officer, I continued. Combined with the financial records we've already gathered, it's enough to bring down the entire operation. It's risky, Larson warned. If they suspect a trap, they won't, I insisted. They've been recruiting legal professionals from the beginning. This fits their pattern. After 2 hours of debate, Larson reluctantly agreed. I don't like using civilians as bait, she said, eyeing me critically. But you're already in deep, and this gives us our best shot at the leadership. Later that evening, in the privacy of Natasha's home, we fine-tuned the details. We sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by legal pads and coffee cups, the professional distance we'd maintained in Larson's office abandoned. The agent playing me needs to know my mannerisms, Natasha mused, making notes. Little details that would convince James I'm genuine. I reached across the table, taking her hand. Are you sure about this? Using your identity puts you at risk. We've both been at risk since the beginning. She squeezed my fingers. At least, this way we control the narrative. That night, as we lay in her bed, the weight of what we were attempting settled over us. Natasha traced lazy patterns across my bare shoulder, her touch both comforting and electrifying. What happens after? I asked into the darkness. When this is all over? She was quiet for so long I thought she might have fallen asleep. Finally, she propped herself up, looking down at me with those intense green eyes. I don't know, she admitted. My career, your career, there will be consequences no matter what. I could find another jurisdiction, I offered, the words painful even as I said them. Or I could. She brushed hair from my face. Or we could face it together. The next morning, I called James. I have someone, I told him. A judge going through a costly divorce needs cash quickly. His interest was immediate. A sitting judge? Currently hearing cases? Criminal court, I confirmed, the lie smooth on my tongue. She's discreet but desperate. Bring her to the meeting tomorrow. The board will want to meet her personally. I hung up, hands shaking. For the first time, the mysterious board would appear. The trap was set. That afternoon, Natasha and I met with Agent Bailey, the woman who would impersonate her. Despite being physically similar, same build, similar facial structure, they couldn't have been more different in mannerism. You hold yourself like this, Natasha demonstrated, straightening her shoulders slightly. Confident but not aggressive. And when you're nervous, I added, you touch your left wrist briefly, like checking for a watch that isn't there anymore. Bailey practiced the gestures, gradually transforming herself into a convincing version of Natasha. By evening, she had the mannerisms down perfectly. Last details, Larson said, adjusting Bailey's recording equipment. The moment they explicitly offer judicial influence for money, give the signal. We'll move in immediately. The night before the operation, Natasha stayed at my apartment. Neither of us slept much, the magnitude of what we were attempting keeping us wide-eyed in the darkness. If something goes wrong tomorrow, she whispered against my neck, know that meeting you, this, has been worth everything. I turned to face her, memorizing every feature in the dim light. Nothing's going wrong, I promised, willing it to be true. This time tomorrow, it'll be over. She kissed me then, with an intensity that stole my breath, desperate, loving, terrified. When we finally broke apart, tears glistened in her eyes. I love you, she said softly. Whatever happens tomorrow, I needed you to know that. The words echoed in my head as dawn broke, as we parted ways, as I prepared to spring the trap that would either free us or destroy everything we'd built. The morning of the operation dawned clear and cold. I dressed carefully, conservative suit, minimal makeup, nothing that would draw attention. My hands trembled slightly as I fastened my necklace with its hidden microphone. Testing, I whispered, knowing Larson's team was listening. We read you loud and clear, came the response through my nearly invisible earpiece. Agent Bailey is in position. The plan was meticulous. Bailey, impersonating Natasha, would meet me at a coffee shop near the Prosperity Partners headquarters. We'd arrive at the meeting together, presenting the perfect package, a desperate judge and her lawyer friend, both willing to compromise their ethics for financial gain. Bailey was already at the cafe when I arrived. Transformed into Natasha's double, her hair styled identically, wearing an outfit we'd borrowed from Natasha's closet. The resemblance was uncanny. Ready? I asked, loud enough for my mic to pick up. As I'll ever be, she replied, in a perfect imitation of Natasha's measured tone. James greeted us at the penthouse with predatory enthusiasm, his eyes assessing Bailey with poorly disguised interest. Judge Hill, what an honor. Autumn speaks highly of you. Let's skip the pleasantries, Bailey replied coolly. I understand you have a proposition that could benefit us both. James smiled. Direct. I appreciate that. Follow me. The board is waiting. My heart raced as he led us into a conference room I'd never been allowed to enter before. 5 people sat around a gleaming table, 3 men and 2 women, all immaculately dressed, radiating wealth and power. I recognize none of them from my research. Our newest prospects, James announced. A silver-haired man at the head of the table gestured for us to sit. Judge Hill, your reputation precedes you. As does yours, Bailey replied. Though I confess, I don't know exactly who I'm dealing with. Names are unnecessary, the man smiled. Results are what matter. For the next 30 minutes, they outlined their proposal with remarkable candor, clearly convinced that Bailey's presence meant they were safe. They wanted her to manipulate sentencing for certain defendants, ensure specific evidence was suppressed, and occasionally pressure other judges to do the same. In return, the silver-haired man concluded, "You'll receive quarterly payments through our consulting firm, completely untraceable." Bailey touched her wrist, the signal. "And if I were to help you with the Wilson case next month? 20,000, cash." "I believe we have a deal," Bailey said, extending her hand. The door burst open, FBI agents flooding the room. "Federal agents, nobody move." The chaos was immediate. I pressed myself against the wall as agents secured the room, handcuffing the stunned board members. James lunged toward me, his face contorted with rage, before an agent tackled him to the ground. "You bitch," he spat. "You're dead. You hear me? Dead." Larson appeared at my side, steering me toward the exit. "We got them all, plus evidence of at least 30 other crimes. You did good, counselor." Outside, surrounded by FBI vehicles and flashing lights, I searched desperately for Natasha. She was supposed to be in the command van, monitoring the operation. Then I saw her, pushing through agents to reach me. Without hesitation, she pulled me into her arms. "It's over," she whispered. "We did it." The fallout was both better and worse than we'd anticipated. The entire Prosperity Partners leadership was indicted on multiple federal charges. Eric Davis and dozens of other unwitting participants had their charges reduced or dismissed entirely. The professional consequences came swiftly. Natasha faced an ethics investigation for her involvement with a lawyer appearing in her court. I was temporarily suspended from practice pending review. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, I found myself back at the Greensboro Public Library, sitting at the same table where Natasha and I had argued over Harrington's text. The ethics board had reinstated my license with a formal warning. Natasha had received similar treatment, allowed to return to the bench, but assigned to civil cases only. I was deep in research for a new case when a familiar voice broke my concentration. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up to find Natasha standing there, holding Harrington's precedent in constitutional law, the very book that had started everything. "I saved it for you," I replied, watching as she sat across from me, just like that first day. "I have something for you," she said, sliding the book toward me. "Open it." Inside, nestled between pages discussing legal precedents, was a simple silver ring. "I can't preside over your cases anymore," she said softly. "But there's no ethical violation in loving you." I slipped the ring onto my finger, speechless. "It took a pyramid scheme, an FBI operation, and professional censure," she continued, "but I finally found something more important than the letter of the law." "And what's that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "The spirit of it. Justice. Truth." Her green eyes met mine. "Love." Around us, the library continued its quiet business, students studying, librarians shelving books, strangers searching for information. None of them aware that right in their midst, between cases and statutes, in the most unexpected of places, 2 women had found their truth. "So," I said, squeezing her hand, "what precedent does this set, Your Honor?" She smiled. That rare, full smile I'd come to treasure. An entirely new one worth following.